just got done watching Goosebumps, the brand new Disney Plus and Hulu series, early. It comes out October 13th and it premieres with 5 episodes, and then you'll get an episode week after week for that. And I gotta say, I was not that excited for this series. I didn't have much hope for it. I liked the Jack Black Goosebumps movie, and I really thought the show back in the day was quite freaky, but the books itself, I think, were such a product of its time and one for kids to read and kind of have an introduction to horror. And I've never known how that can be streamlined and adapted into a modern day setting with some of these storylines. But I have to say, I was proven wrong once again by a show, because this show is surprisingly good, even if it has a rough start, and it takes those concepts and adapts them very well for the modern day setting, very much exploring different types of horror throughout R.L. Stine's novels, and inputting those storylines into one bigger overall picture. And I found that to be the smartest thing they could have done. Because when you look at the Jack Black Goosebumps movie, which I actually kind of enjoyed for that, seeing all the different creatures and monsters, that's basically what the whole fun part was seeing R.L. Stine in there, Jack Black playing him, and all these monsters that he created coming to life. That was the whole basic concept of that. This kind of feels like something Mike Flanagan would have done, and it's funny because coming out literally the same day is The Fall of the House of Usher, which is taking all of Edgar Allan Poe's work and combining into one story with different characters, different scenarios, all these different things. And now we have a Goosebumps show premiering where it's not taking like these, it's saying all these different things live in this world, but it's like what is going on with these kids all correlate back to the book. So you have like the Cuckoo Clock of Doom, you have Slappy the Puppet, you have certain things like that that they take and put into a modern day setting and make it work. And that's what was very exciting for me. Now, before we get any further into this review, this will be a non-spoiler review. I'm going to stay as vague as possible when it comes down to certain storylines. I will discuss like what Goosebump novels, like some of the Goosebump novels that they touch on, because each of the episodes are named after one. But when it comes down to character reveals, twists and turns, that will go nothing towards this. That will not, I will never ruin your experience for that. And it's just kind of a little bit of housekeeping rules. I only got the first 8 episodes. There are 2 episodes left, so if for some reason the show shits the bed and becomes like a piece of trash like in the next 2, I will probably do an updated video talking about why my rating is going down. So far, I haven't had to do one of those, so thankfully we might not have to do that for this. That said, let's dive into this. What is the new Goosebumps series about? And it's about a group of 5 high schoolers who unleash supernatural forces upon their town. Now they must work together in order to save it. It's created by Rob Letterman and Nicholas Stoller, and I'm a major fan of Nicholas Stoller, so it's great to see he has his hands in this. Right off the bat, you can definitely tell that this, like, tonally, I have some issues with it. But this is a show that adults will be able to watch with their kids and show them this is stuff that I grew up on. And I think there's a nice little bonding moment to that personally that makes me excited to see what the future has for this series and how it can elevate and bring those parts. Because depending on your kids, some of them might be a little bit too scared to go maybe elevate themselves to watch a couple of different other horror films. The series has a lot of vibes of like It Chapter 1 and 2. With taking in a small town, a group of 5 kids, not kids, like teenagers more likely, and how they're dealing with the supernatural forces. But then you also have this other storyline going about with the parents, and this mystery of what did they possibly do, and how do they know about this already? Which kind of, again, plays onto that It thing with them being as kids, going to adult, and this kind of being a little bit different there. So it very much has a Stephen King vibe to it already from the start. The other thing I really liked is, and I mentioned this, is that the series isn't afraid to take itself seriously. And we'll talk about this in my cons because I thought the tone was a little bit all over the place with that, but I actually wish they would have kept in on that. Last but not least, I really love how each and every one of the books, of course, from R.L. Stine, always had the same wicked tone to it, even if it was a different genre or subgenre of horror. In this series, it's the same way of how they're able to balance that. You go from psychological, you go to creature feature, you go to like body horror. You have all these different elements of horror in here, and it's really smart on how they take wind of that. And the way that they actually structure the entire show, I thought was brilliant. Like the first, I thought it was a little weak at the start, but I like how each episode kind of focuses in on a different character and how they got to this point. And then once you get to 5, 6, and 7, the show really starts to take head of what it's doing, what its ideas are, what its concepts are, and taking what you already learned from the first 4, but doubling down on it and making it even stronger. And that's when, like, the first 4 I was just watching, and I was like, okay, I'm enjoying this, but I'm not, like, blown away by it. And when I get to 5, 6, 7, I was like, wow, I'm, like, really engaged with this. And then by 8, I knew I was really engaged with it by the time that episode had ended. And they do a really good job writing that in there. And TV is, like, one of the things I'm pickiest about. If I don't like a TV show, I just won't finish it. This, I'm pushing, I pushed through the first 2, and I really dug it. And maybe it was just because I didn't know what to expect from the first 2 episodes, but I found this to be such a fun little brilliant series, and it's surprisingly good. It's not perfect, but it's a show that I would definitely recommend to people. And that's where I go as far as say I do want to give credit to where credit is due, is that Rob Letterman and Nicholas Stoller do an amazing job writing this show. I think that was like one of the best parts about it, is how they were able to input these certain storylines into the overall narrative, while also having this very interesting narrative that makes you kind of actually think of all the different characters and the different trials and tribulations that they decided to do. And with Slappy being like the main advertising thing, I do have to say that what they do with Slappy I found to be very fascinating. And specifically the episode that he is introduced in, Night of the Living Dummy, that was probably my favorite episode, just for the fact, that one and one right after that, because the way that they actually subvert your expectations and do certain things with the actual design of the episode on a cinematography level, on a storytelling level, I thought were brilliant. And didn't seem to be something that you would throw into the middle of the series, but it only elevates it better to go in that direction, that surprising direction. And again, it's really hard to stay vague, but I was really impressed with those ones. And I'm actually really satisfied with like the storyline itself too, specifically like the twists and turns that it's going to take and the reveals that you find out. It all feels real world stuff mixed with the supernatural. And for me, those are the elements that I find to be the best when it really needs to take wind. So take that as what you will. And take credit where credit is due. I do want to give a shout out. Every single one of the actors that in here are great. I think each and every one of them you'll start to understand a little bit more. But the ones that were standouts for me was Justin Long as Nathan Brat. I just love Justin Long, and I think he has such a fun time doing this. Ben Cockle, who plays Harold Biddle, is a very important character to this entire storyline. Really liked him. Rachel Harris is excellent. Issa Briones is fantastic. Has one of my favorite episodes so far when it focuses on her. Nya E. Pugh, I thought was also great. Zach Morris was a character that I didn't fully love at first, but by the last episode that I watched, I really started to dig him. Will Price, Miles McKinnon, I mean, they are all big standouts. And I think for me, like seeing all these actors and how they are, it's really great to see how much more they can keep diving into these roles and keep doing more things to that all. So you get the horror, which the horror is fun. I wouldn't say this is like super scary though. Like there weren't any jump scares or anything that had gotten me. It's more just the subgenre of horror that makes this a fun series. And other than that, like the show is just quality, good made. So it's really hard to talk about this without getting into spoilers. But the last thing I want to talk about is and I think this is going to be a mixed aspect, but I like the changes they made from the book. I like how they brought certain things like these into the modern day era, and how they took certain devices and changed how they worked from the book. Some of them are like pretty much equally the same, but I don't know how certain diehard fans will feel on that, because you got to modernize it a bit, and I think the modernization works overall for me. Might not work for you. I like it, but if you're a diehard Goosebumps fan, please let me know down below in the comment section. With that said, though, let's dive into my issues with the show. And first off, I think there's too many episodes and also too many characters. The too many episode thing is because by episode 8, I felt pretty satisfied. Besides where it had ended, I just wanted like a little bit more, and you could easily have made this maybe into a season 2, and I understand there's 2 more episodes. I'm just kind of curious what else you can fit in within 2 more episodes of this series. And it's just very fascinating for me on that behalf, but again, I could be wrong once we get there. Alongside, I do think it takes a little bit too long to get into it. The first 2 episodes I was not impressed with. I was actually really disappointed with, and I told myself if the 3rd episode didn't start to win me over, I was probably going to dip out. And it starts off pretty weak, mostly just from some dialogue choices and the tonal imbalance of it all. Like, sometimes it's very childish, and then sometimes it goes very serious, and I didn't really know how to feel on the show with that. And then it finally really starts to find its footing in 3 and 4, thank God. But it made me confused on what they were trying to do with this show, and it wasn't really working out for me personally. And like I had mentioned a little bit ago, I also found there to be too many characters. Not all the characters are bad. I think a lot of them are actually developed pretty well, but it really comes down to the parent storyline, where I was a bit confused on certain ones, and I just kind of sat there going, I'm like, oh my god, there's a lot of characters. And usually when you have a lot of characters in horror, it's to kill them off, but I mean, it's Goosebumps, so like they're not gonna like just go willy-nilly killing every single character off. So I do find that there's one thing, is that it's just a little bit of tonal imbalance and a little bit of imbalance with all the characters. But with that said, Goosebumps was a surprisingly good adaptation of the novels, as well as what R.L. Stine had created. And I think for people who are major fans of Goosebumps, they're going to get a lot more out of this. For someone like me who read some, watched the show sometimes, was a little bit too scared, I went into this kind of just rolling my eyes, not really expecting much, but actually getting a really well done series that I think fits a nice little subgenre of horror, to where kids can watch it with their parents, and their parents can relive some nostalgic stuff, and the kids can be opened up to horror in a new way. Because it's not too scary, but it's just enough to get you into the genre. And I really love the weaving in of all the novels and certain aspects and how they took that place. It was a lot of fun. And I think when you need a horror series around Halloween to watch, Goosebumps is a fun series overall. So with all that said, I'm going to give this series a B. Thanks so much again, guys, for watching this. Make sure to leave your thoughts down below. What is your favorite Goosebumps novel or your favorite episode from the original television show? Let me know all down below. Thank you so much again for watching. And of course, until next time, stay classy.